Paul tries to kick Yoko out of the secret session. John's silent and sick revenge left Ringo traumatized London. The very name echoes with the ghosts of legends. But in the hallowed halls of Abbey Road, where harmony once reigned supreme, a different kind of spectre was rising. A spectre of discord, of betrayal, and of a silent, chilling revenge that would forever scar the soul of a band and those who witnessed its demise. The year is 1969. London, a city still reeling from the cultural explosion of the 60s, was now witnessing the slow, agonizing implosion of its greatest musical export. The Beatles, the vibrant energy that once defined the capital, felt heavy, laden with the unspoken anxieties of a generation. And in the legendary Abbey Road studios, a place synonymous with their unparalleled magic, the air was thick with something far darker than creative tension. The band, once an unbreakable brotherhood, was fractured. The legal battles, the financial disputes, the clashing egos, all had taken their toll, eroding the foundations of their shared dream. John Lennon, the defiant prophet, found himself increasingly isolated, his loyalty shifting from the band to his new muse, Yoko Ono. Her constant presence in the studio, once a point of contention, had become a symbol of the irreversible changes tearing them apart. The studio itself, a labyrinth of soundproofed rooms and control booths, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a battleground. The familiar scent of old tape and stale coffee was now tinged with the metallic tang of resentment, the cold breath of impending doom. Each session was a delicate dance around unspoken grievances, a desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage, even as the cracks widened into chasms. Paul McCartney, ever the pragmatist, the one who desperately clung to the idea of the Beatles, saw Yoko's presence as an intrusion, a disruptive force that threatened to extinguish the last flickering embers of their collective genius. He believed that if he could just remove this one element, the magic might return, the harmony might be restored. But John, in his own complex web of loyalty and defiance, saw it differently. He saw Yoko as his anchor, his truth, and any attack on her was an attack on him. The stage was set for a confrontation, a desperate plea for the past to return, and a chilling, silent retaliation that would forever alter the landscape of rock and roll. So he's leaving an innocent bystander, Ringo Starr, traumatized by the sheer brutality of John's psychological warfare. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. John Lennon. The name itself was a symphony, a declaration, a challenge. I'm in the late 1960s, in the hallowed, yet increasingly tense, environment of Abbey Road studios. He was a man undergoing a profound metamorphosis. His environment was a paradox, the creative crucible of the world's most famous band, yet also a suffocating cage of expectation and resentment. The studio, with its iconic mixing boards and soundproofed walls, was meant for creation, but now it often felt like a stage for an unfolding tragedy. He was surrounded by the ghosts of his past. Paul, his songwriting partner, now a rival. George, the quiet Beatle, increasingly assertive. And Ringo, the steady heartbeat, caught in the crossfire. Yet his true orbit now centered around Yoko Ono, her presence a constant, often unsettling, fixture in the studio. She was his muse, his collaborator, his shield against a world he felt was increasingly hostile. His iconic round glasses, once a symbol of intellectual curiosity, now seemed to magnify the perceived slights, the unspoken criticisms. His days were a chaotic blend of creative bursts, philosophical debates, and simmering tension. He'd spend hours at the piano, coaxing melodies from the ether, or retreat to the control room, surrounded by the hum of equipment, the scent of old tapes. But even these moments of creation were fractured by the palpable discord that permeated the air. He was a man of immense talent, yet plagued by a deep-seated anger, a feeling of betrayal, and a fierce, almost primal, loyalty to Yoko. The studio, once a place of effortless camaraderie, was now a minefield of unspoken words and simmering resentments. Paul, ever the band leader, and the one who desperately tried to hold the pieces together, saw Yoko as the wedge, the disruptive force. John, however, saw Paul's attempts to exclude her as a personal attack, a betrayal of his own evolving identity. The stage was set, not for a musical performance, but for a psychological battle, a clash of wills that would leave deep, irreversible scars. And Ringo, the unassuming drummer, the loyal friend, was about to become an unwilling witness to the brutal, silent unraveling of everything he held dear. The air in Studio 2 at Abbey Road was thick with the scent of stale cigarettes and the heavy weight of unspoken words. The session had been difficult, fraught with the usual passive-aggressive exchanges and the palpable tension that had become the band's new normal. Yoko Ono sat quietly on a blanket, near John's amplifier, now her presence a silent yet undeniable force in the room. For Paul, it was the final straw. He had tried to ignore it, to work around it, to pretend that the magic could still flow with an outsider constantly present. But every whispered conversation between John and Yoko, every shared glance, every moment of creative collaboration that excluded the rest of the band felt like a dagger twisting in his heart. He saw it not just as a personal slight, but as a betrayal of the Beatles, of their shared history, of the very essence of what they were. During a break, as the engineers reset microphones and the roadies tuned instruments, Paul approached John, his face grim, his voice low but firm. "John," he began, his eyes darting towards Yoko, "we need to talk. Privately." John, sensing the impending confrontation, merely raised an eyebrow, a defiant glint in his eye. "Whatever you have to say, Paul, you can say in front of Yoko. She's with me." Paul's jaw tightened. He took a deep breath, his gaze now fixed on Yoko. "Yoko," he said, his voice strained, "I think it would be best if you perhaps waited outside. This is a Beatles session. We need to work." The words hung in the air, an unspoken ultimatum, a desperate plea for the past to return. The other members of the band, George and Ringo, froze, acutely aware of the precipice they were standing on. Yoko, ever composed, simply looked at John, her expression unreadable. All eyes turned to John. This was the moment, the choice, the final definitive split. He could de-escalate, he could compromise, he could try to bridge the chasm. But John Lennon, in that moment, chose a different path. A path of silent, unchilling defiance. A path that would lead to a sick revenge, leaving Ringo, the innocent bystander, forever traumatized by the brutal unraveling of their shared legacy. The unspoken ultimatum had been delivered, and John's response was about to shatter the last vestiges of their brotherhood. The air in Studio 2 became a palpable force, heavy with the weight of Paul's ultimatum and John's simmering defiance. Ringo, perched behind his drum kit, felt a cold dread creep through him. He had witnessed countless arguments, countless clashes of ego, but this felt different. This was not just about music. It was about loyalty, about ownership, about the very soul of the Beatles. John's response to Paul's demand was not a shouted retort, not a dramatic exit. It was far more chilling. He simply looked at Paul, a slow, indeliberate gaze that held a depth of resentment Paul had rarely seen. Then, without a word, John turned to Yoko, took her hand, and squeezed it gently. It was a silent, yet utterly unambiguous declaration. She was staying, and Paul's desperate plea had been rejected. Paul, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and despair, tried to continue the session, but the energy was gone. The music, once a unifying force, now felt like a hollow echo. Every suggestion he made was met with a subtle, almost imperceptible resistance from John. Every attempt to guide the session was subtly undermined. John would play a discordant note, or intentionally miss a cue, or simply sit in stony silence, his eyes fixed on Yoko, a silent message passing between them. Ringo, trapped in the middle, felt the psychological warfare unfold around him. He watched as John, with a chilling precision, began to dismantle the session, not with overt aggression, but with a calculated, passive resistance. It was a slow, agonizing torture, designed to punish Paul for his audacity, for his attempt to separate John from Yoko. The studio, once a place of joyous creation, had become a silent battleground, each note, each silence, a weapon in John's arsenal. George, ever the observer, retreated into his own world, his guitar becoming a shield against the toxic atmosphere. But Ringo, the emotional heart of the band, felt every tremor, every crack in their foundation. He saw the pain in Paul's eyes, the cold fury in John's, and the unwavering presence of Yoko, a silent witness to the destruction. The tension was suffocating, a tightening coil around their very existence, and Ringo knew, yet with a sickening certainty, that something irreversible was happening, something that would leave them all forever scarred. The session dragged on, a slow, agonizing death march. Paul, desperate to salvage something, anything from the wreckage, tried to push through, to force a semblance of creativity. But John's silent, sick revenge was in full swing. He wasn't just uncooperative, he was actively sabotaging the session, not with overt acts, but with a chilling, psychological precision. He would play the wrong chord, just slightly off-key, enough to disrupt the harmony without being overtly confrontational. He would sing his lines with a detached, almost mocking tone, draining the emotion from the song. He would stare blankly at Paul when given direction, then turn to Yoko with a conspiratorial smile, a silent message passing between them that excluded everyone else. It was a calculated act of cruelty, designed to punish Paul for his attempt to separate him from Yoko, to make him feel the same sense of exclusion and betrayal. Ringo, behind his drums, was a traumatized witness. He watched as the man he had once considered a brother systematically dismantled their shared dream, not with a bang, but with a series of subtle, devastating blows. He saw the light drain from Paul's eyes, the frustration turn to despair. He felt the weight of John's cold, unwavering gaze, a silent threat that extended to anyone who dared to challenge his new loyalty. Then came the moment. Paul, trying to introduce a new melody, a hopeful, almost nostalgic tune, looked to John for his input, for his usual creative spark. John, however, simply stared at him, a chilling, empty smile playing on his lips. He then turned to Yoko, whispered something in her ear, and both of them erupted in a low, unsettling chuckle. It wasn't a laugh of joy or even of malice. It was a detached, almost perverse amusement, a shared secret that excluded Paul, George, and most painfully, Ringo. In that instant, Ringo felt something inside him break. The laughter, that chilling, shared amusement, was the final, brutal blow. It wasn't just the end of a session. It was the end of an era, the death of a brotherhood. He dropped his drumsticks, the clatter echoing in the suffocating silence. He looked at John, then at Paul, then at Yoko, his eyes wide with a profound, almost childlike horror. He couldn't take it anymore. The silent, sick revenge had reached its climax, and Ringo, the loyal, unassuming drummer, and was left utterly traumatized, a broken witness to the irreversible destruction of the Beatles. Ringo's drumsticks clattered to the floor, a sound that reverberated through the studio like a death knell. He stood up, his face pale, his eyes wide with a profound, almost childlike horror. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even look at John. The silent, sick revenge, the chilling, shared laughter, had broken something deep within him. He simply walked out of the studio, leaving behind the shattered echoes of what was once the greatest band in the world. His departure was a silent scream, a testament to the unbearable toxicity that had consumed them. Paul, his face etched with despair, made no attempt to stop him. George, ever the quiet observer, merely shook his head, a look of profound sadness in his eyes. John, however, remained impassive, his gaze fixed on Yoko, a chilling satisfaction in his expression. His revenge was complete. Ringo's trauma was deep and lasting. He had witnessed the brutal, psychological unraveling of his friends, the destruction of a bond he had cherished. The incident left him with a profound sense of loss, a lingering sadness that would follow him for years. He would later speak of the sick atmosphere of those final sessions, the feeling of being caught in a crossfire of emotional warfare. For John, the act of silent revenge, though seemingly victorious, came at a profound cost. He had severed the last remaining ties to his past, burning bridges with a cold, calculated precision. The incident solidified his new identity, his unwavering loyalty to Yoko, but it also isolated him further, as cutting him off from the very people who had shared his most extraordinary journey. The transformation was stark. From a creative genius to a man capable of chilling emotional cruelty, his brilliance now tinged with a dark, unsettling edge. The echoes of that shattered session would haunt them all, a constant reminder of the irreversible damage wrought by unresolved conflict and the corrosive power of a silent, sick revenge. The incident in the Abbey Road studio, though never fully detailed in public, became a whispered legend, a dark chapter in the lore of the Beatles. Ringo's departure, though temporary, was a stark symbol of the band's irreversible demise. He eventually returned, but the innocence was gone, replaced by a profound weariness, a lingering trauma that would forever color his memories of those final, fractured days. Paul, though heartbroken, continued to fight for the band, for the music, for the dream. But the wound, inflicted by John's silent revenge, the brutal rejection of his plea, never truly healed. It became a permanent scar on their already strained relationship, a testament to the corrosive power of unresolved conflict and the tragic cost of ego. John, having achieved his victory, found himself in a new, yet equally complex landscape. He had chosen Yoko, severed the ties, and forged a new path. But the ghost of the Beatles and the memory of his own chilling actions would follow him. His music, though often brilliant, carried a new depth of pain, a profound understanding of loss and the irreversible nature of human relationships. The silent, sick revenge had won the battle, but it had lost the war for true peace. The story leaves us with a haunting question. What happens when the bonds of brotherhood, forged in the fires of shared genius, are shattered by ego, resentment, and a chilling act of psychological warfare? What is the true cost of winning when it means destroying everything that once was? The Abbey Road Studios, once a place of unparalleled harmony, now held the echoes of a silent, sick revenge, a trauma that lingered, unhealed, in the hearts of those who bore witness. The music of the Beatles, though immortal, forever carries the undertone of that final, agonizing discord. And the memory of John's chilling, silent retaliation and Ringo's traumatized gaze serves as a stark reminder. What if the deepest wounds are inflicted not by shouted words, but by a chilling silence, and a revenge so subtle it leaves its victims forever scarred?